Hey, Judy. What's wrong? It's a cold day when Christmas songs are played everywhere in the city. I stopped to look at a tree ornament that caught my eye. My husband, whose white breaths are clinging in the air, turns his head to look at me from a few steps ahead. He smiles softly, his ears red from the cold. I adore the way he looks at me. Nothing? Let's go home and have dinner. It's a hot stew for an especially cold day. I've already prepared it. Sounds great. Laughing, we hold hands and walk down the street. From somewhere, a familiar Christmas song comes into my ears. I'm Judy. What I'm about to tell you is a rather strange Christmas miracle I experienced a few years ago, and the story leading up to it. You're late. Before I could say anything, I cringed at the anger hurled at me by my husband, Dan. Where have you been? Well, I just went to the closest deli. It was the middle of December, when it felt like it was about to snow. His cuss words chased me out of the cold without my coat just a short time ago. Are you trying to fool me? I'm the breadwinner of this household. When I come home, I expect the proper dinner to be ready and served. Can't you even manage such an easy task? He grimaced at me in front of the dinner. No hot sauce. And how come you look blasé about it? There's no way to eat chicken wings without it. Don't mess with me. I was scolded so harshly that I rushed out of the apartment with a wallet and just came back with a hot sauce. As I gasped for my breath, he became even more irritated with me. Deli? Are you crazy? Isn't it cheaper to buy at a supermarket? He pointed at the hot sauce and rolled his eyes. You have no sense of budgeting. I couldn't resist retorting to that. Of course, I buy groceries at the supermarket, but it's far away. I told you earlier it slipped my mind to buy it today. Anyway, you get upset if the food gets cold. That's why I went to the closest shop. I did forget to add it to my shopping list and had it run out, but I was sure the chicken wings tasted fine even without it. I didn't get why he was so angry about it. His anger didn't cool down at all. God darn it! Where's your apology? I did earlier, didn't I? What's with your attitude? You're the one. My retort added oil to the fire. He continued throwing his temper at me for another hour. Who wants such stale food now? In the end, he flipped the plate with chicken wings and went out to get dinner outside. A few days later, I went to clean my parents' house that was up on sale and stopped by an old lady whom I called Grandma in the neighborhood. Listen, Grandma, your prediction was off for the first time. I didn't predict anything. The grandma who cared for me since I was a little girl said I was going too far and laughed ambiguously. No way! Everything you predicted since I was a kid came true. If they weren't predictions, then prophecies? I gave my wry smile. When you told me not to go to the mall once, there was a lightning strike, and it almost burnt down the mall. Another time, when I said I was going to relax at home all day, you advised me to go out because it was going to be sunny. I wasn't up for it, but you insisted, so I went out reluctantly, and found out my house was robbed. If I was at home, I would have had to face the robber for sure. I still get the chill down my spine when I remembered about it. The robber was caught later on with a knife in his pocket. What if I was at home on that day? The thought made me cringe. Other than these, Her predictions came true like she was a real prophet. "Hey, Grandma." "Yes?" Even though she said it was all in my mind, or just a coincidence, she listened to me when my voice became serious. I don't think I would have been prepared for my mom's illness if you hadn't told me, especially she was my only family. My mom also said you gave her peace of mind. You told her that I would be blessed with something on one Christmas not far away. She was relieved to know that I would have a bright future before she left me behind. My mom told me about it in her hospital bed. It was a ray of hope for her, and seeing her content about it was a sign of her love for me. That's why when Dan proposed to me on Christmas Day, I thought it was just as you predicted. I met him through a mutual friend. He seemed to be a humble and gentle guy then, but once we got married, he turned into an arrogant husband. Just like the hot sauce incident, he got upset with trivial matters. He put his hands over the food and said it was too cold to eat, or a salad was too lukewarm for him. He was the one who played on his phone, ignoring the food for a long time. Not only about food, but he also criticized the way I cleaned the apartment and washed clothes. Almost everything I did wasn't up to his liking, which made me feel trapped and suffocated. I don't want to go back home to him. I couldn't help but whine at Grandma as I felt a sting up in my nose. Now, it's almost sunset. Don't you have to go back and cook dinner?" Looking at the sky, she rushed me, being slow to move. Feeling softly rejected, I stood up lazily. "You're going to be okay, as long as you stand on your ground. Even though you'll have struggles, you are going to be happy one day. You'll have a Christmas that will make you jump up and down in joy. So, just live straight and truthfully. God is watching." I quickly turned around at the words that softened my heavy heart. "Is it a prophecy?" "Let's see. I'm just an old woman." She gave me another ambiguous smile and baffled me. "Let's see. If I put more effort, Dan might change." I switched my mood, thinking it might have been too early to judge her original prediction. But then, "Dinner, massage, iron my shirt." Dan's hostility toward me got worse and worse. It wasn't even a year since we got married, but it became normal for him to order me around, and instead of a single kind word, he was constantly grumpy and overbearing. "Who do you think you are?" "Why? What did I do?" He was upset with me again one night. "You don't have the decency to welcome me back home. Who do you think you are to hang around outside until now? I have to warm up my food in a microwave, god darn you." His menace made me sigh. "I told you, right? I had a co-op meeting tonight. I even left a note on the table for you." "Shut up! That's not an excuse for lazy cooking." "What do you mean? I didn't cut corners. I prepared the main and sides as usual." "If it's not freshly cooked, it's called cutting corners." His logic was messed up. I should be prioritized before anyone and anything. I've been feeding you. You're my wife. You must obey me. That's crazy. I was stunned by his incomprehensible demand. He stood on his dignity and proclaimed, "You have no family and relatives, and can't live on your own. A scum like you should shut up and just worship me. If you can't, I'll divorce you." He smirked at me. It seemed to me that he was releasing his stress by making me obey him. Anyway, give me a foot massage. I tried my best to restrain myself from snapping back at him. He would have just become angrier anyway. Most of all, I had nowhere to go in the midst of sleet at night. So I sat down on the floor to give him a massage. My life continued as such until one day I fainted from excruciating pain in the middle of grocery shopping and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. I don't understand. My mind went blank as my doctor explained my condition. This virus is transmitted by sexual intercourse. I had your husband get tested as well. Both of you have it. You didn't realize it as there was no symptom. As far as I could tell, you need surgery. I'm very sorry to say this, but I think the chance of conceiving in the future seems extremely unlikely. Regardless of his concern, he told me clearly and left. Dan followed the doctor in a hurry. I couldn't have a baby. As I repeated to myself what I'd been told, my blank mind slowly filled up with darkness. I needed to find out more. I tried to follow my doctor and Dan with my wobbly legs. Wait, Doctor, Dan. But I froze when I heard what they were talking about. So, must everyone I've been with get tested? Exactly. They must be treated all at once. Otherwise, there's no point as it keeps coming back to you. Would they know what the test is for? Of course. I listened with despair to the conversation between Dan, who was persistent, and my doctor, who was getting annoyed with him. The bottom line seems to be that Dan has had at least 3 girlfriends and is still seeing them. I complained to a picture of my mom in an empty room. I had a hope, you know. Even though he is not a good husband now, he might change once we have a baby. I kept the words of Grandma that I was going to struggle, but I would eventually be happy, like a good luck charm. I guess I was wrong. In fact, Dan seemed to only care about his own health. He was sensitive to his own condition and went to the hospital diligently, but he never showed any concern for me. As I lost my parents, I had a strong longing for having my own baby. I hoped for a happy family with a husband, children, and me. My tears rained down hard on a picture of my mom in my hands. Mom! A sob escaped from the gap between the fingers that clamped over my mouth. Dan suddenly appeared then. What are you wasting your time for? You haven't prepared dinner yet. Here are the divorce papers. This is your punishment for neglecting your master and making a fuss. He noisily came into the room and rained the papers down on my head as I was sitting down. You are irritatingly depressing. I'm ready to divorce you anytime. No problem for me. You're the one who's gonna be in trouble, right? Instead of slacking, do your duty if you don't want a divorce. I'm not slacking. Oh wait, there's one more punishment. I'm not giving you the living expenses this month. He looked happy, smirking, and came closer to me. I'm giving you, a chance to reflect and change your attitude. Know your place. If you disobey me, a divorce. When he finished with all he has to say, he left the room, looking refreshed. Divorce. I felt my feelings cool down at the sight of Dan's signatures on the papers. Mom, I decided. Wiping my tears from the picture frame, I spoke to my smiling mother. Watch over me. Then I kept quiet and continued living with Dan for a while. He treated me like a servant as usual and took out his fits of anger on me. I argued back here and there, but mostly passed the days in silence. And one day, "I've told you already, I can't eat lukewarm salad, and cold stew is out of the question. How long does it take for you to get things right?" As he began his tantrum, I sighed internally and decided to act on my plan. "If I don't obey, you are getting a divorce, right?" "Right, you remember that at least. If you don't want me to leave you, reflect on your stupidity." He sneered and leaned back in a chair. "You are a bit weak upstairs, aren't you?" "What the?" He fluttered his eyes in surprise at my reply. "What did you just say?" I looked at him, whose expression showed his disbelief. "You repeat the same thing every time. Do you know what vocabulary is? You only utter the word divorce over and over. Your lack of vocabulary is quite sad." "What the heck?" "Let's get a divorce. It's totally fine with me. I'll be a stranger to you just as you wish." "What the? Are you serious?" I smiled and said my farewell words to him, whose mouth was agape, and he even forgot to get angry as usual. "I've already moved all my necessary things out of here. If there's anything you don't need, just throw it away. Goodbye." I shuffled off the apron I had bought when I got married and folded it lightly. I placed it gently in front of him and put the house keys on top of it. I looked at him one last time. Then I left the house with my pre-packed suitcase. "What the heck is going on?" His voice chased after me as if he snapped out of his confusion. I could care less. Yay, I'm free. I pretended not to hear anything. With a refreshed feeling, I made my way lightly to my parents' house, where I decided to live again. 1 year since then, the divorce was already finalized, yet Dan continued contacting me. "You are sorry, aren't you? I'll take you back if you apologize. A wife should..." and so on. I had turned off notifications and ignored the non-stop texts coming in, which I'd never experienced in my marriage. After much persistence, I decided to have a final face-to-face meeting with him at his parents' house. "Why have you been ignoring me?" Dan, who seemed to behave in front of his parents, spoke to me in a sensible way. "I've been texting you all this time, but you never replied once." "Oh yeah, I turned off the notification from you." "Why?" "It was too annoying." "I am annoying? Me?" "Yes, you. So, what do you want to talk to me about?" "You are..." His face slowly turned red with anger as I answered him in a deliberately annoyed manner. "What's with your attitude in front of my parents? What the heck do you..." "Oops, my bad." He finally shouted louder, but then he remembered where he was and uttered an apology that he had never made in his marriage. I thought to myself, wow, amazing. He knows how to apologize. I tried my best to resist the urge to make fun of it and prompted onward. "What do you need to talk to your ex-wife you divorced about?" He cut to the chase, puzzled that my attitude remained casual in the presence of his parents. "Hold on. Why are you acting so strange? Aren't you struggling after the divorce? How are you living now?" He made it sound like he was concerned about me. Yet he never came to check on me, even though he knew where I was. "I didn't mind getting back together, if that's what you want. Doesn't it make you happy?" Not at all. I almost laughed so hard seeing his overconfidence. It doesn't make me happy, and doesn't help me in any way. I'm making enough income to support myself. Besides, the living expenses you were giving me, were only $500 a month. It wasn't even enough for what we needed. I mean, you're the one who's struggling to manage such an amount without me, right? The cost I was covering for you are gone, and I'm much more comfortable being alone now. I don't understand the point of getting back together after being free. I pretended to be baffled, to which he was clearly agitated. What? You were supposed to be a housewife. I mean, the detail of our finance isn't what we're here to talk about. Unsettled by the presence of his parents, he mumbled, Listen, Dan, stop acting like a little kid who got caught doing mischief and calm down a bit. There's no point in trying to make yourself look good. They know all your secrets. What secrets? I signed him to be quiet and revealed the answers. You're mistaken about me. I wasn't just a housewife. I told you that I used to live abroad because of my late father's work, right? I used the German I learned back then to translate at home. There were many materials on the bookshelves, you know. I didn't care for those. Those were the materials and manuscripts before translation. You never touched those since you had no interest, right? Thanks to that, I was able to hide some equipment to record you. Wait. He was stunned by the word recording. It was his father who presented the real thing in front of him. See? All your secrets, like how you used to treat me, are out now. Your parents were in tears watching this and apologized to me. They are ashamed to have raised a son who treated me horribly. Being under the spotlight almost made him run for the hills. But his mother grabbed him and made him seated again. She signed me with her eyes, and I replied by pulling out the papers. These are copies of our divorce papers. There were parts marked with a red circle, which I pointed to Dan. You know them, don't you? No way. It was understandable for him to be in such a shock. What I pointed to him were the witness signatures. On it were written the names of someone he knew very well. Actually, there wasn't enough space. You had more than 2 girlfriends, right? Wait a sec. No more waiting. Before I could continue, a resentful voice was the first to echo. Dan, you never told us about STD. We only have a relationship with you. That means you brought it in from somewhere else, didn't you? I mean, what am I, a fling? Didn't you say we'll get married one day? That's a statement only a bachelor should say. Oh no. We watched the video too. You are a villain not only to us, but to all women. You are the #1 public enemy. You are finished. Surrounded by his girlfriends, Dan crumbled to the floor. At such a son, his parents made exaggerated sighs. I had a private detective look into his girlfriends and secretly contacted them. Of course, I had told my ex-in-laws the whole story too. The result was this chaos. Your game is up now. No! There was a strong request from his parents that their son needed punishment. All his girlfriends and I demanded compensation from him. He worked for a company owned by a family member of his mother, so the payments were deducted from the payroll to prevent him from escaping. He was forcibly taken back to his parents' home, and under their strict supervision, he was facing a long period of compensation payments. 6 years have passed since then. Hey Judy, what's wrong? It's a cold day when Christmas songs are played everywhere in the city. I stopped to look at a tree ornament that caught my eye. My husband, whose white breaths are clinging in the air, turns his head to look at me from a few steps ahead. He's smiling softly, his ears red from the cold. The little girl in his arms also has rosy cheeks. I adore them so much. Grandma's prediction is actually amazing. I murmured to myself. My current husband is, surprisingly, the brother of one of Dan's girlfriends. I hit it up with the girlfriends afterward and hang out sometimes. I met him by chance, and he gently soothed my depression. It's really a strange story. If it wasn't for what happened with Dan, I'm sure I wouldn't even have met my current husband. So that's what Grandma meant when she said, "I'll struggle, but I'll be happy." I'm once again amazed by Grandma's prediction. Moreover, after we got married, I got pregnant, which was said to be extremely unlikely. I remember when I got sick on Christmas Day, I was rushed to the emergency room where the doctor indicated I was pregnant. I was literally jumping up and down with my husband, and the annoyed nurse scolded us to keep calm and rest. It was a true Christmas miracle. This time of year makes me think about it deeply. I've been hurt a lot by Dan, but now I'm so happy. Mommy! I come out of my thoughts when my daughter leaves my husband's arms and clings to me in her fuzzy coat. Nothing. Let's go home and have dinner. It's hot stew for an especially cold day. I've already prepared it. Sounds great. Yay! Laughing, we held hands and walked down the street. From somewhere, a familiar Christmas song comes into my ears.